In the shadow of the past lies the pain of the present. She wasn't always my stepmother. Once she was my mother's best friend. My mother believed in love. She believed in the bond of friendship. But some friendship are poisoned from the start. This was before the darkness, before the bitterness. In those moments, everything seemed perfect, untouched by the bitterness to come. Even in those moments, a shadow lurked. It all started with one single destructive choice. The past, being a storm we cannot escape, has left its mark on us all. Mama had so much love to give. Her friendship with Mrs. Tinuade, my stepmother, was a source of joy to her. In those days, they spoke of the future together. Before bitterness set in, it was a bond of friendship unbreakable. My mother and my stepmother, Mrs. Tinuade, shared more than just friendship. They shared sisterhood. Their bond so strong to break. But gradually, betrayal was creeping in. Subtle changes began to emerge. At first, this was unnoticed, but gradually the warmth of their friendship began to chill. The foundation of trust began to crash, setting the stage for the betrayal that would shatter everything. Today was supposed to be a normal day. Mrs. Tinuade walks in with my father. My mom, surprised, about to ask, "My friend, you didn't tell me you were coming," only for my father to shut her up with the shock of our lives. Meet my new wife, Mrs. Tinuade. What? This was betrayal wrapped in normalcy. Their faces, once familiar, now looked strange. I confronted Papa, hoping for an explanation, but the answers he gave were vague and empty, void of the respect and love we once shared. Mama's once best friend took over her house with an iron grip, in contrast to the warmth they once shared. Our once lovely home now became a battlefield. Mama's heart began to crack pieces by pieces. She grieved an unspoken burden. She had lost more than just a husband. She lost herself as well. The love she once cherished now felt like distant memory. In her despair, Mama wandered like a ghost, disconnected from this life, her heart filled with pains. I tried so hard to bridge the sorrow that had swallowed my mother. No matter how hard I tried, it seemed so vast to mend. The cracks kept widening. Alone in her bedroom, Mama cried through the empty space, a symbol of her shattered world. Every day became a battle as she struggled to find strength each day. Her emotional breakdown manifested into a chaotic outburst. In that state of pain, Mama collapses. She woke up, her life forever changed. Depression had eaten deep into her soul. She was a typical shadow of herself. Meanwhile, Tinuade and Papa continued to live their lives as though nothing ever happened. I came back from running errands from my stepmother and I couldn't find my mother. She had left the home without letting anybody know, in her deteriorated state of mind. Where do I begin to find her? My mother's departure marked the beginning of my new pain. I was too young to go through this, I thought to myself. I sadly watched my stepmother throw away everything that ever symbolized my mother's presence, ranging from my toys to her family photos and her kitchen utensils, and she replaced them all with hers. The numerous tasks I once shared with my mother now became my sole responsibility. At what age, if I may ask? My tender energy was constantly sapped by unending demands. Verbal and emotional abuse was my daily portion. My father, my one-time best friend, no longer looked my way. I found solace in the few toys I had left. They were my companions. While I died in silence, Papa and my stepmother's bond grew stronger. Every minor mistake I made was met with insults and beatings. I was constantly isolated and heartbroken. Even in the face of guests, she wouldn't give me a breathing space. I was constantly drained due to the numerous chores. In my moments of solitude, I found refuge in my books. While my father and his new wife enjoyed their lives, I remained a mere background presence. My stepmother's cruelty became a daily routine. She would shout at every slightest error I commit. Everyone was not as wicked as my stepmother after all. Mrs. Johnson, our neighbor, knocked on the door and handed over a basket of food to me. I received this with a gladdened heart. This was the first time after a long while I would eat good meal. I slept gracefully that night, remembering the old good memories we once shared. I embraced my supposed newfound hard life with resilience and strength. My tasks kept on increasing day by day. As if the webs that covered my father's eye just left, he gradually began to notice the cruelty of my stepmother. He would watch me do chores from a distance, and from his face and eyes I could sight pity in them. One night he summoned courage and decided to speak to my stepmother about her cruelty towards me. It was a question of choosing between their relationship and his love for his daughter, which he finally started realizing. The argument was quite heated as I could hear their voices from my room. My stepmother seemed not to be buying what my father was saying. He came into the kitchen and they continued last night's argument. I looked at them from a distance with a gleam of hope. Finally, my father is speaking up for me. My father, the one I love, came into my room again after 1 whole year. Trying to console me, letting me know he was in charge, he posed the question. Eliezer, where is your mother? I've not seen her for a long while now. What? I asked. What do you mean, where is my mother? My mother left this house 1 year after you brought in her best friend as your wife. She left depressed and traumatized. As we speak, I can't even seem to trace her. What? Then we both realized this was not ordinary. My stepmother had gone to get some charms that would help her take over my father, take over my mother's home, and make my mother depressed. The rule was that my father would never remember me again, neither my mother. Having to ask of my mother's whereabouts meant the charm was gradually fading away. That very night, my father and I went in search of my mother. Oh, it was an emotional roller coaster. Finally, my once happy family was going to get back again. We searched and searched and searched for days, asked around the neighborhood, yet nobody seemed to find her. After weeks of search, someone seemed to know where a lonely solitude woman lived in an uncompleted building. Oh, my own mother now lived in an uncompleted building. They took us there. As my father rushed in and his eyes met with that of my mother, it seemed as though the burden she had carried for the whole year left her immediately. She seemed to come back to her senses. They hugged each other profusely. I joined the queue. I wept so badly. It was an emotional moment for us all. My father and I happily took my mother back home. It was time for the witch to pack out of our home. My stepmother was confused when she saw my mother, well and happy, in the arms of my father once again. My father went into the house, threw her belongings out, and sent her away. He went further to beg my mother's forgiveness and together our family was reunited once again. Thank you for watching Mama's Bestie. Please don't forget to like, subscribe and comment on my YouTube channel. Bye bye.